talking a little bit about the topographical map that you typically are going to utilize, and some of the features on the map, because really when you're navigating with a map and compass, the map is a lot more important than the compass is. You can actually navigate without the compass, but it's a tool that makes it a lot easier. But some of the things that you want to notice on the map is, one is the scale. This one happens to be 1 to 24,000.
Okay.
So it's unitless, so that's 1 inch or 1 centimeter, whatever you want to pick, but it's like, say, this was designed for inches, so it's 1 inch is 24,000 inches, so that would end up being 2,001 to 2,000 feet on the terrain. So, and a lot of times on the base plate of your compass, you have scales on there. There's a scale on the bottom of this map, so that you can tell that it comes out here. This is a mile, and that's why this one's structured this way. Kilometers, it doesn't quite come out. The one that's kilometers usually is 1 in 25,000. The other thing too is you'll notice the green shading. There's colors of the different maps. The green is the vegetation, and blue stands for any kind of water, and usually black is for man-made objects, or things like rock piles, stones are also black. Roads, sometimes I'll use red if it's a larger road. The brown is really important, and that's the contour lines. And you notice every fifth one is called an index contour line, and it's thicker than the other ones. And if you follow it around, it'll end up having an elevation. So like this one right here is 1,100 feet. And you can tell down in this, the bottom of the maps tells you the elevation. I think this one is, each contour line is 20 feet. And so, or you can figure it out by just, going from interval to interval. There's 5 apart, and you can just mathematically figure it out that way. The other thing that's important is, over on the right bottom of it is an arrow pointing to north. And one of the things about when we're using a compass, our compass is attracted to magnetic north, and magnetic north is south of the North Pole, and the North Pole is true north. So your compass is going to be drawn towards magnetic north. So if you live in an area like this area, the difference is just 1 degree. Shreveport, Louisiana is like 0, so you don't even have to worry about it. Where I was in New York, it's 13 degrees, and it's 13 degrees westerly, which just means that, like, my compass is, what I'm looking at is pointing 13 degrees to the left of true North Pole. So you have to compensate either on the compass, which is easier, or you have to add 13 degrees to your bearing that you've got. And so down here on a map, it'll tell you what the declination, the magnetic variance is, and it's going to, like this one that's got GN stands for grid north, because that's the north that the grid was drawn to, and then true north is next to it. So there's true north, grid north, and magnetic north. And so basically you can pretty much ignore grid north, because grid and true north are almost identical on most maps. So that shows you the variance. But for what we're going to do, we're not even going to be talking about that, because around here you can kind of just not pay any attention to the declination. And the other features on a map, as you see, there's all kinds of bizarre shapes and stuff, and you can actually use your hand for a lot of the features. Like if you see a circle and the rings just get smaller and smaller, that's going to be like a hilltop, so you can use like your knuckles, and if you just draw circles around it, that's what it looks like. And that's considered a top of a hill, and a series of hilltops is called a ridge. And so you've got that on your hand also. And then in between hilltops is a saddle. And a saddle is defined as an area between hilltops that has two sides that are sloped away from you. And so that's a saddle. And so coming down from a saddle, do it like this for the camera, you've got what's called, these things right here are called spurs. And that's an area that is a higher, that it's defined as, if you're standing on a spur, you've got 3 places that are sloping away from you. So it's sloping away from you to the front and both sides, so that's, you're on a spur. And in between that is what's called a reentrant or a draw. That's where the water is going to flow downhill. So if you look on a map, most of the reentrants will have water, little water streams coming out of them. And so if you look on your hand, you've got hilltops and then a draw or a spur in between two spurs with a draw in between them, and that's where the water is going to be flowing down. So that's areas that you also, when you're going through a map, you're going to be crossing over spurs and going down into reentrants or draws. And then you've got like an area where you've got both of them coming together. And if it's small enough, it's usually just called a hollow. So you can see on this map there's like Lost Hollow. But that's on a larger scale, like if you're out west or something like that, it's more like a valley. But if they're real close together, they're usually just called a hollow because there's not enough space in there to make be any kind of a valley. So those are some of the things. The last one of the other ones is a depression, and that'll look like a hilltop, but it'll have tick marks going in to show you that it's actually a depression, because there's no other way of telling whether it's up or down. And I don't know if there are any of those. Yes, there's one right here. So on this map you've got a circle, so instead of a hilltop, and it also a clue is there's water there, but if you notice there's little tick marks on the around it, that shows that that's a depression instead of a hilltop. Okay, and then there's a whole bunch of different, we don't have time to go through it, but there's a lot of different things. Like if you see something like this is a marshy area. Places that are white is where there's like a lack of trees, but it depends on how old the map is. You could have a space like this, but there'll be tons of trees, but they'll be all small just because they've grown up there in, say, the last 5 or 10 years, depending on when the map was drawn in. So sometimes you can't go by that, but this is a good navigational feature. If this is all wooded and all of a sudden you see the corner of a field, you know you're right there. Okay, so that helps knowing that. So the white is typically areas devoid of trees, or they're going to be small scrubby stuff, and then the dark green is dense wooded areas. Larry, have I missed anything on this map that's important that you can think of?
I don't think so. You had a trail on there. It might be nice to show them the trail.
Oh yeah, because where it's got 2 dotted lines, that's like a Jeep trail. And then if it's a single dotted line, that's a foot trail. So you see these right here are, it's like a little gold. Yeah, and it's a dirt road. This right here is actually a paved road.
When it's solid.
When it's solid, yeah. Okay. So this is a dirt road.
So here it goes from a solid to a Jeep trail, it looks like. Yeah,
and actually here is, this white is a road also, but it's so small that like they're not even designating it. Because I happen to know that this is a road right through here, so it's just kind of nothing. If you see like these little squares, that's a house or a building of some sort.
And that's all important if you happen to just be looking for like land association, like if you're just looking for a road, like a rail or a backstop.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's really important too. Like there's things that you can use to navigate with, and one of them is called a chair rail. And so this right here you could use as a chair rail, and what that just means is if you want to go, like say over here to this pond and you're over by this swamp, all you have to do is navigate straight over to, you can either start, like say you're starting at this junction of this footpath and this little road. All you do is you don't even use your compass or anything. You just see that it's right there. So you just walk along here to where you see the road. You can either walk on the road, or if it's a pipeline, say, that'll be a better one. That'll be an easier one. Say you've got a pipeline or a stream bed. If it's a creek, you just follow so that you keep the pipeline or the stream or whatever you're using for a handrail in sight and to one side or the other. And you can actually, if you're in an orienteering race, you can actually run and and you can go as fast as you want. But you can just kind of deadhead over to this lake without even worrying about getting lost, because you got something in it. They call it a handrail because you got something to hold on to while you're walking. And the other one is, what's that called? Backstop. Backstop, yeah. A backstop is if you're coming from someplace, and like say you're on this road and you're exploring out in here and you want to come back, the backstop prevents you basically from overshooting your target. So you just kind of walk until you hit that. And one of the tricks you use, like say if your car is parked along here somewhere, is you, or you need to hit a junction. If you're navigating and you want to hit this, this little point where there's a footpath and a road right here, if you want to make sure you hit that, and you're say, you're over here at this hilltop and you've got like this, where these are really close together, this is like a cliff. So if you're standing here, the cliff's behind you, and you want to get over to this junction right here, what you purposely do is you purposely aim off to where you're over here. So instead of aiming your compass and trying to hit the spot exactly right there, what you do is you aim, in this case, because this is smaller and easier to miss, you'd aim off to the east of this or to the right so many degrees, and that way when you hit that, you know that's your backstop, so you're not going to go any farther, but you know that you've got to turn left because you've purposely aimed off to the right side. Because if you just try to hit this and you miss it one way or the other, this is small enough, if it's dense enough, I've actually walked beyond something like that. You could even miss that, hit that, and think that, oh, I got to turn left, and you never, and then maybe you find it over here and you're on the wrong one.
You're just aiming for the largest association on
Yes.
the map, so that
Yep.
you can find the small one.
And people use that all the time. If they park their truck along the road, they'll aim to one side. So instead of, you know, walking for a mile this way and realizing, oh man, I got to turn around and go back, it must have been the other way, purposely aim off so they just can only walk a few yards, especially if it's around a corner.
It only takes a few degrees of error to miss that exact location.
If you're going to use, if I could just interject something real quick, if you're going to use that method, before you leave your car, make sure you know which way you're going, so that when you aim off, you know which way to aim back. You know what I mean? If you're going east, you know, set off from your truck. All right, I'm going to go explore east. Well, then when you turn around, you know which direction to try to hit the road, so you can walk back.
That's a good point.
Oh yeah, for sure. Whenever you start, you want to take a bearing so you know what you're doing. Same as if you have a GPS, you want to mark a datum point so that you have something to get back to. So it's sort of like just putting a stake in the ground right there where you're leaving from. What I wanted to show a little bit too is about compasses. I have a couple of different ones here. This one has a mirror in it, and the mirror is used for sighting, but what it does, it just allows you to basically use the compass as a gun sight and actually see the bezel, so that you can line the needle with the doghouse, or on this one it's put a bubble on a bubble because it has a round circle and the north is a round circle, so you just match that up with this type, so it's bubble on bubble. And yeah, and these are most of them have a red arrow, and you've got like a red, like we call it a doghouse, or it's you know, the part where you're supposed to line the magnetic needle up, and that's where your bearing is. We should probably go over the compass, the parts of the compass. This is a base plate type compass. This one actually has a base plate underneath it, even though it doesn't look like it does, but the ones with mirrors have a base plate on the bottom. But the base plate is used when you're trying to locate places, or you want to shoot a bearing or something, and you're using your map and compass together. You can find what degree it is off of magnetic north by using your base plate. Now, I'll go over that in a couple of minutes. This is the bezel ring right here. Right here in the center is, on this one, is where your azimuth indicator is, and this one has two arrows here. This is your direction of travel. Now, on some compasses, you know, you could end up having it backwards. One of the big mistakes people make when they're using their map is they put the compass on there and they've got their direction of travel backwards, and so they're 180 degrees off. But you've got a movable bezel ring here, and the magnetic needle is floating on a jeweled bearing. And so you also want to make sure you keep everything metal away when you're doing this, because any type of metal will attract it. I think my watch probably might do something.
The walkie-talkie
It'll throw it off. Your knife?
Yeah.
Your knife will throw it off?
Yeah, so you want to make sure, like if you got a
Always
bunch of
hold it
metal
out.
in your pack or anything, it's better to even put your pack down and move it away, just slightly away from it, if you have to be really precise. Most of the time you don't have to be super precise, but if you're really trying to navigate something hard, you want to have everything that's metal moved away from you. There's also indicator lines on the inside that you line up, and I'll show you here how to like use this as a protractor. That's the feature of this type of compass, is it's used as a protractor to actually find your azimuth or bearing. And say that you're at, let's find a spot here. If you're at this hilltop right here, and you want to go over to this hilltop over here, all you have to do is lay your base plate from one spot to the other, just like you were going to draw a line to it with like a ruler. And you want to make sure that your compass, this is the important part, your compass, if you're going from this hilltop to this hilltop, you want to make sure your compass is pointed with the direction of travel arrow going forward, not like this, because that's a real common mistake to do. The other common thing is you want to make sure that the map north is pointed up. So north is here and here, because if you have your map twisted around, you're going to be 180 degrees off also. So you line these 2 points up, and you hold your base plates still, and all you have to do is turn this bezel ring, making sure that the north end is up. You disregard the needle, and you've got these parallel lines in here. What you do, and I can't, there's a little parallax here, so it's hard for me to tell. What you do is you line these, you turn this until these parallel lines in your compass are parallel with the lines, the grid lines that you have drawn in on your map. That's why I always make sure when I print maps I have all these grid lines in here. And if you'll look, everybody come up here where they can look, and you can actually turn this. You can take turns turning this if you want. But you can see where there's a blue grid line there, and you want to, actually this one turns out you can actually put those lines on top of it. Right? Everybody see that? So once you've got that where it's exactly parallel, these lines are exactly parallel with the grid lines, and you've got point A to point B, the map is pointing north, this compass, this is the north end of the compass, and the direction of travel is going the right way. And you notice that the north arrow is here, pointing north. So now you read the bezel ring, and this is saying it's 32 degrees. Okay, so that's the bearing. If you're standing up there, direct line of sight, you're not going to necessarily be able to walk a straight line there because of terrain maybe, but if this was an open field, say, you could just walk exactly straight on this bearing and you would hit exactly right on that spot.
John,
Yes.
so you would orient your map, you would take your compass and you would twist your map around until it was pointing north before you do that?
Well, this way, I didn't even orient the map. I didn't even have to.
Okay.
So I make sure, if you make sure that the north end of your map is up and your direction of travel is correct. See, what I could have done is, if I had my map like this.
So you don't necessarily have to turn your map to what actual.
Yeah, you really don't have to ever deal with that, because I can have my map like this, but as long as I know this is the north end of the map and I don't have it upside down, and I've got my direction of travel, like say I'm here, but I'm going this way. Say I'm over at this house, and I want to go to this depression. There's a depression right there, as you can see with the little tick marks. Okay, it'd be real easy for me to go like this. I've done this before. And you're 180 degrees off because your direction of travel is going this way, but I'm actually traveling from here to here. So you make sure that the direction of travel is the way you're going to go. So I'm going from, let me get over here, I'm going from that little house right there to this depression right here. There's the house, there's the depression. So I'm going from here to here, so this is the direction of travel my compass goes. This is the south end of the compass, or the map. So, to do that, this is the north end of the compass. So now, I disregard the needle. You don't even want to pretend it's not there. Now you see how easy it would be to screw that up if you didn't always make sure that the direction of travel is correct. Because now, this is the north end of my bezel. And so I'm making sure these now are parallel. Well, I'm at 160 degrees. But if I could also do it like that. And now I'm at 0 going north. But if you see, I'm supposed to go south. Yeah. This is a real common mistake. But if you're cognizant of those two things, you never have to even worry about orienting your map when you do that. Because that's a big major first step that takes a lot of time. But if you're walking in the field and you want to know where you're, what's nice is if you have a bearing, say you've got a bearing of like 60 degrees, and you're walking around, it's nice to be able to like look at the map and look straight up and say like, okay, that terrain feature that I'm facing on the map is right there in front of me. So to do that, you just put your base plate anywhere. Well, to orient your map, actually, you put your map, you put that at north, and then you just turn the whole thing until the needle gets in the doghouse, and now you know that your map is oriented correctly. But you can also do the same thing as if you have a bearing that you want to go to. Keep the bearing 60 degrees, and say whatever it was, you know, you keep it on hold it on the map, and you can do the same thing by you just keep turning the map and compass is all one unit until you get in the doghouse, and then when you look down whatever direction you're going, that's you're going to be seeing it right in front of you.
Something that I do too, and it's kind of like a poor man's orienteering method, is just like aiming off at an object. So like, let's say like earlier when you had your degrees set and you knew that your bearing from here to here was going to be 32 degrees. Instead of having to constantly look down at 32 degrees and follow your compass to stay in a straight line, you can aim it off and say that tree is at 32 degrees. So as long as I walk from this hill to that tree, I'm good. And then once I get there, I can walk in front of the tree, take another bearing, and just leapfrog from one landmark to the next.
That's a great point, because
because when you go through the hills, you're walking down and you may not.
You're not going to be able to see it, right? Especially if it's far away.
Your pace count gets off when you're going downhill, and so you might have drifted to the left or the right trying to follow this. But if I see that tree off in the distance, I know no matter if I go down this hill and walk up that hill, if I can see that tree and hit that tree, I can now take another bearing and just leapfrog from one spot to the next.
Exactly, especially if you're by yourself. If you got two people, you do the same thing, except for have one person go out in front, and then he stops, and then you pass him and go on, and you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, with a buddy like that.
That's real convenient if you have somebody with you. But if you're alone, you got to do the way you were suggesting. And in the Northeast where I am, you can't see terrain features at all hardly.
Right.
And the trees are almost all the same size. So you have to keep your object in sight, because if you look down to make sure you don't trip over something, you look up and then you lost it.
And it works. It works really well too if you know where your backstop is, or where your handrail is that you need to get to.
Oh, right.
I mean, you can just fly through the woods like that by just hitting a tree, hitting another tree, or hitting a like what you said, a saddle. If it's a really far distance, you don't even have to worry about your compass. You can just know, as long as I head to that saddle, I'll be good, you know?
Yeah, because you don't want to walk staring at your compass.
Yeah.
Because you're not even enjoying the
and you actually get a little dizzy doing that, you know? Like, you'll actually find yourself focusing so much on trying to keep it perfectly in that doghouse that you'll get off 1-2 degrees over time, and before you know it, if you're actually trying to hit that true bearing, you're wrong, you know?
Well, one trick I've learned too is when you go around a tree or an object, go around to the right, the next one go around to the left.
Yeah, because of our lateral drift.
Yeah, you just keep one or the other, because you will, if you keep going around the same, if you're always going to the right of something, you will drift off finally.
That's a good point.
So I always flip back and forth when I'm going around something. And when you're going through dense woods, there's even sticker burrs and stuff that you're not going to see on the map, but you can't go through that stuff, and you've got to walk around all kinds of things.
And it just takes something like that to distract you from what you're doing, like having to pull this off, and then you might have stepped over here to get this off of you, and now you're just off a little bit.
Yeah, and over time it's a lot.
You know, and it's so easy to just mix those steps up, and I always just try to find something to go to it, and then I know if I can get there, I'm pretty safe.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you're alone, you pretty much have to do that, especially if you're in any kind of woodland that's got a lot of dense tree foliage and stuff. Or if you get into some impassable thing too, you can just turn 90 degrees and make it, and keep your pace count. Usually I carry a notebook, and you want to write down your pace count where you stopped here, but then you pace to the right or left at 90 degrees to your line of travel till you get beyond the point, and then you turn back, and then you go from your pace count, you add that to that, then you turn in 90 degrees again the other way, and you walk back the same amount of paces that you paced the first time to get around it.
You just make like half a square around what you're trying to
and then you end up exactly across, like say it's a lake or something, you end up exactly across from that. If you can even put a marker there so that when you get there, if it's small enough, you can shoot a back azimuth
to that
flag. And you can actually line yourself up to tiny correct in case you made a little mistake.
You can even use that to aim off then too.
Yeah.
Like use that as long as I can get back to what that flag I just dropped. I don't have to worry about what the degree is on the corner of the lake.
And as long as you pick them up, you can carry surveyor tape with you and tie a little orange flag on something, and that helps you out too. It's just you don't want to leave that stuff around.